Millionaire twins left behind on a trip. A street vendor sheltered them and got a huge reward. Crisp October morning air carried the scent of autumn leaves through Central Park as the Harrison family prepared for their departure from New York City. Thomas Harrison, a prominent tech entrepreneur, checked his platinum Rolex while his wife Elena adjusted her designer coat. Their private jet waited at Teterboro Airport, ready to whisk them away to their next destination, a luxury resort in the Hamptons. 8-year-old twins Emma and Ethan Harrison had been exploring the hotel's opulent lobby, their matching navy blue coats making them easily recognizable. Emma, with her carefully braided blonde hair, clutched her pink designer backpack, while Ethan, ever the curious explorer, had wandered toward the revolving doors to watch the bustling Manhattan street life. The family's entourage of assistants, bodyguards, and staff members moved with practiced efficiency, loading luggage into the convoy of black SUVs. In the organized chaos of departure, a critical miscommunication occurred. The head of security assumed the twins were already in the second vehicle with their nanny, while the nanny believed they were safely seated in the first SUV with their parents. As the convoy pulled away from the prestigious Plaza Hotel, 8-year-old Emma and Ethan stood frozen on the sidewalk, watching their family's vehicles disappear into the maze of Manhattan traffic. The realization hit them simultaneously. They had been left behind in one of the world's largest cities, with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the few dollars in Ethan's pocket. The twins' initial shock quickly transformed into panic. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she clutched her brother's hand, while Ethan tried to maintain his composure, remembering his father's words about being brave in difficult situations. The bustling sidewalk seemed to swallow them whole as hundreds of strangers hurried past, each absorbed in their own urban rhythm. They attempted to re-enter the hotel, but the busy staff didn't recognize them without their parents' presence. The concierge, dealing with multiple VIP arrivals, politely but firmly explained that unaccompanied minors couldn't remain in the lobby without guardian supervision. The twins found themselves back on the street, more lost and frightened than ever. As the morning progressed into afternoon, Emma and Ethan wandered through the concrete jungle of Manhattan. Their designer clothes and obvious distress attracted unwanted attention from various individuals. A group of teenagers laughed and pointed at their expensive outfits, while others seemed to watch them with less innocent intentions. The twins' hunger grew as the sun climbed higher. They had never experienced true hunger before. Meals in their world appeared magically at scheduled times, prepared by private chefs and served on fine china. Now the rumbling in their stomachs felt foreign and frightening. Near Washington Square Park, they encountered Miguel Rodriguez, a weathered man in his 50s who operated a small hot dog cart. Miguel had immigrated to New York from El Salvador 20 years earlier, working tirelessly to support his family back home while pursuing the American dream $1 at a time. Miguel noticed the two well-dressed children standing uncertainly near his cart, their faces showing clear signs of distress. Their expensive clothes contrasted sharply with their obvious vulnerability. Something about their situation triggered Miguel's protective instincts, honed by years of looking out for his own children before they grew up and moved away. Without hesitation, Miguel approached the twins, his kind eyes and gentle demeanor immediately putting them at ease. He offered them hot dogs and warm sodas, refusing to accept the few crumpled dollars Ethan pulled from his pocket. As they ate hungrily, Miguel listened to their story with growing concern. The language barrier initially posed challenges, but Miguel's broken English combined with the twins' basic Spanish created a bridge of understanding. More importantly, his genuine care transcended words. He recognized their fear and vulnerability, seeing in them the same innocence he had once protected in his own children. As evening approached, Miguel faced a difficult decision. His modest apartment in Queens could barely accommodate his own needs, and taking responsibility for two obviously wealthy children carried significant risks. Yet, looking at Emma and Ethan's frightened faces, he knew he couldn't abandon them to the dangers of New York. City streets. Miguel made a choice that would change all their lives forever. He closed his cart early, sacrificing precious income, and gently guided the twins toward the subway station. His small apartment would have to do. It wasn't luxury, but it was safe, warm, and filled with the kind of love that money couldn't buy. The twins' first night away from their privileged world was spent on Miguel's modest couch, covered by his only spare blanket. Emma cried quietly, missing her silk sheets and climate-controlled bedroom, while Ethan tried to comfort her while fighting his own fears. Miguel sat in his kitchen chair, watching over them through the night, understanding that their parents must be experiencing unimaginable terror. As Chapter 1 concluded, the contrast between two worlds became starkly apparent. Somewhere in the Hamptons, the Harrison family was mobilizing private investigators, FBI contacts, and unlimited resources to find their missing children. Meanwhile, in a tiny Queens apartment, two millionaire children slept under the protection of a man who earned less in a year than their family spent on a single vacation. Dawn broke over New York City as the Harrison family's worst nightmare entered its second day. Thomas Harrison stood in a war room setup at the Plaza Hotel, surrounded by laptops, phones, and a team of the country's most expensive private investigators. FBI agents worked alongside his security team, analyzing surveillance footage from every camera within a 10-block radius of the hotel. Elena Harrison sat motionless by the window, her usual composed demeanor shattered by a mother's worst fear. She clutched Emma's favorite stuffed animal, unable to process how their perfectly organized world had collapsed so completely. The family's vast wealth, which had always solved every problem, seemed powerless against the simple fact that their children were missing. Media outlets began picking up the story, broadcasting descriptions of the missing twins across every major news network. The Harrison family's prominence in the tech industry made the story national news, with reporters camping outside the hotel and theorizing about possible kidnapping scenarios. Meanwhile, in Queens, Miguel began his day as he had for 20 years, preparing for another day of honest work. But today was different. Emma and Ethan sat at his small kitchen table, sharing a breakfast of eggs and toast that Miguel had prepared with ingredients he couldn't really afford to spare. The twins were experiencing their first glimpse of life outside their privileged bubble. Emma watched with fascination as Miguel counted coins to determine whether he could afford to buy them lunch. Ethan observed how Miguel carefully rationed his coffee, making it last longer than usual because he now had 2 extra mouths to feed. Despite their dire circumstances, something beautiful was happening in that modest apartment. The twins began to understand concepts they had never encountered before: sacrifice, genuine kindness without expectation of reward, and the dignity that comes from hard work and honest living. Miguel faced an increasingly difficult situation. His limited resources were stretched thin, and he knew that keeping the children meant risking legal consequences if he was discovered. Yet, every time he considered contacting authorities, he remembered stories of children lost in the system, and his protective instincts overwhelmed his rational fears. The twins, meanwhile, were developing a deep appreciation for Miguel's sacrifices. They watched him give up his own meals to ensure they had enough to eat, saw him sleep in his uncomfortable chair so they could have his bed, and witnessed his quiet dignity in the face of their crisis. As the search intensified, surveillance footage from various locations began painting a picture of the twins' journey through Manhattan. Police tracked their movements from the Plaza Hotel through Central Park to Washington Square, and finally to the subway station where they had disappeared from view. The breakthrough came when a street-smart detective recognized the significance of hot dog vendors in the area. These vendors, often overlooked by society, were actually the eyes and ears of the city's streets. They noticed everything and everyone, developing an intimate knowledge of their territories that formal security systems couldn't match. When investigators approached Miguel's usual spot at Washington Square Park, other vendors immediately recognized the children from the news reports. The vendor community, bound by unspoken codes of loyalty and mutual protection, faced a difficult choice between protecting one of their own and helping desperate parents find their children. Eventually, the truth emerged. Miguel's fellow vendors, understanding that the children needed to be returned to their family, provided investigators with enough information to trace the twins' location. The decision wasn't made lightly. They knew Miguel's actions came from pure compassion, not criminal intent. The reunion took place on a quiet street in Queens, far from the Manhattan luxury the twins had known. As black SUVs pulled up to Miguel's modest apartment building, the contrast between worlds became dramatically apparent. FBI agents, private security teams, and the Harrison family emerged from their vehicles like a small army descending on the humble neighborhood. Thomas and Elena Harrison rushed up the narrow staircase, their hearts pounding with a mixture of relief, gratitude, and disbelief. When Miguel opened his door, they saw their children, safe, fed, and surprisingly calm despite their ordeal. The twins' reaction surprised everyone. Instead of immediately running to their parents, Emma and Ethan turned to Miguel with expressions of genuine affection and gratitude. They had formed a bond with this humble man that transcended social boundaries and cultural differences. As the family prepared to leave, Thomas Harrison faced a moment of profound realization. Here was a man who had risked everything to protect his children, asking for nothing in return. Miguel's actions embodied values that Thomas had always claimed to hold, but had rarely been tested to demonstrate. The reward Thomas offered was not just monetary, though it was substantial enough to change Miguel's life forever. He established a full scholarship fund for Miguel's extended family, purchased him a proper apartment in a safe neighborhood, and most importantly, offered him a permanent position overseeing the Harrison family's charitable foundation. But the greatest reward was the relationship that developed between the families. The twins insisted on maintaining contact with Miguel, visiting him regularly and considering him an honorary grandfather. They had learned lessons about compassion, sacrifice, and human dignity that no amount of wealth could have taught them. Miguel's story became a testament to the power of human kindness across social divides. His willingness to help two lost children, despite his own struggles, demonstrated that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in the capacity to care for others. The Harrison family's experience fundamentally changed their perspective on privilege and responsibility. They realized that their wealth carried obligations to help others, inspired by the example of a street vendor who had more to give than they had ever imagined. As the story concluded, the twins returned to their privileged world, but they carried with them an understanding of a different kind of richness, the wealth that comes from genuine human connection, sacrifice, and love. Miguel's small apartment had taught them more about life's true values than all their expensive schools and luxury experiences combined. The street vendor who had sheltered two millionaire twins had received his reward, but more importantly, he had given them something priceless, a glimpse into the heart of humanity at its finest. In a world often divided by wealth and status, their story proved that compassion can indeed bridge any social divide, creating connections that enrich lives far beyond material measures. As he dialed Richard's number, Jake realized that the broken rope swing that had caused so much pain might also be the thing that finally brought a family back together. Not just Oliver and Oscar, but Jake and Richard as well. Brothers who had been separated by circumstance, reunited by the love and courage of two small boys who refused to give up on each other. The phone rang, and Jake prepared to say the words that would change everything. "Richard, it's Jake. Jake Murphy. I think we need to talk." The second chapter was ending, But Jake knew that the real story was just beginning. A story about family, about loyalty, about the connections that bind us together across time and distance and circumstance. A story about how sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the most unexpected packages. And it all started with two brave boys who refused to let their brother suffer alone.